Welcome back, DG Lovelies, to another episode of the Whovian Complex. And to all our Whovian fans out there, oh my gosh, guys.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. We have so much to talk about.
So would you say this is the top of the roller coaster and we're looking over the edge and going, oh shit.
It's not even this.
Yeah. We're stuck right there on the cliffhanger, and it's like literally the cliffhanger, and we're like,
oh my god. I so adore a cliffhanger.
Oh, right? Oh.
That's just life. Because that's what draws you in. That's what gives you that angst. That's what gives you that feeling inside, like, of pure anticipation, bated breath. Oh my god, this episode.
And what better cliffhanger than that intro at the very end where it goes, here I am, boys and girls.
Oh my god.
That's a good entrance, wasn't it?
All right, my love. So this is the Whovian Complex, and I'm Misha, I'm your geek mom from Diversely Geek, and our wonderful two co-hosts, Mackenzie Fleur, from writer from MackenzieFleur.com, which went live this week.
Yay!
Congrats! And amazing stuff going on in her world, which we'll talk about later. And the wonderful, absolutely amazing Luis Lacao from Men Bites Media, Men Bites Film.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be on this episode because, yes.
Well, we waited to be sure that you'd be on it. It's exactly what we did. It was unusual. We were very, very robust in our chat. In our conversations.
Yeah, I had to mute it a couple times because I was like, oh my god, I'm at work. I cannot do this right now.
But
I accidentally dropped a spoiler. I'm like, oops.
I was like, oh my god, so easy to almost drop them. I've been so interesting because an episode of this and an episode of Critical Role this week had me on my feet screaming, I know! Oh my god! And my kids were like, really, Mom? I'm like, yeah, hello, I knew something.
Duh. I mean, that's the whole point of fandom, is to get excited, to get riled up, to get that emotion burning inside of you. I mean, what better fandom does that to you? That's when you know you're really passionate about something.
That's exactly
is when you get riled up and you get like, oh my god, that was amazing, or oh my god, that pissed me off, or oh my god, how hilarious was that? Those extremes of emotion, that's where you know passion is. It's like,
and that's where you know a show is working.
And that's when you know you got a good season. Because this season, pretty much every episode has had at least one of those moments where you're like, or like, oh my god, that was awesome. Like one of those, it's just, that wow factor was there in every single episode so far. And this one, holy cow. Wow.
I don't even know what to say. Well, yes, I do know what to say. Hello.
Do you now?
Okay, so, so this episode for all three of us, and of course I really wish our lovely Molly B. Marcus was on with us, because the four of us are the long-term Whovians here, and all of us have, been bringing along, been on the journey of the Doctor since the classic Who, and we've grown up, and it's been part of who we are. So, I feel this episode gave me what's the word, Lewis? Because I believe you'd know better in terminology. When the audience member has a full 360-degree recollection or remembrance of an experience. So when you create something that allows the audience member to go, whoa! It's like seeing the entire galaxy at one time. Huh?
I think it's the connectivity of the episode. Honestly, we felt like we were in the shoes of the audience the whole time. We were wondering all the different emotions, and the Doctor was kind of leading us through the different questions that we would be asking ourselves. Yeah. And I think that was fascinating, because even the companions had their moments of the Doctor in this episode, which is very rare. I don't think I've ever seen that, where the actual companions are leading the episode. And I think this one it did a very good job of juggling all three different types of people and 3 different stories lined up, and each of them kind of intersecting in their own thing, but each of them leading the episode instead of just being supplementals. I think that was fascinating the way they structured it.
They were essential to those last moments, don't you think so?
Oh yeah,
to be able to, because I think I was watching them going, okay, this is. Because as we were discussing, I said we were having a 3-layered conversation. I literally posted it in my live chat that there were 3 storylines at one time, but they were going to have an intersectionality because they were bringing together the chaotic nature of the universe of the Doctor, but also of the Doctor's villains, but also of the Cybermen. The Cybermen are not a linear villainous being; they're like this, the galactic universe says that you have what's called a unparalleled loop, and that's how the Cybermen have always existed within the world of the Doctor. So I said, okay, they're going to keep overlapping the stories until we figure out where they intersect. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely does, especially with this episode and what we learned.
Yeah.
And all the references to Classic Who, especially to Doctor time.
Man.
I during the conversation actually with the two of you, I was like, geez, look at this episode from this time. I'm like, look at all the ties to this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not only that, I think there's, 4 different Doctors referenced in this episode?
Yeah,
4 or 5 different Doctors referenced as far back as the 3rd Doctor, which was incredible. I was like, wow, okay.
If we're talking about, if we're referencing backwards, and because I sent you guys the fandom wiki, and then the fandom site, right? We're technically going back to Mondos because it still includes the first Cybermen.
Yes.
And then we're in Pete's world, and then we're in the Rise of the Cybermen. No. Rise of the Cybermen is Pete's world.
Yeah, that's
but Mondos. Mondos was 3rd.
Mondos was 3rd. But at the same time, you loop back because Mondos comes back again, because then we have... During the 4th.
Yeah.
And then, because you have Genesis of the Daleks, which is also referenced here.
Yep.
So then you loop back again because we bring it back with Sims and Missy.
Yep.
So, and this is with the 12th Doctor.
Yes.
So 5 Doctors, no?
Am I 5 Doctors.
We also had
Peter
Davison in there, too. We had the 5th Doctor also in that.
Well, actually, yes. So wouldn't it be more then?
Yeah, it would be more than.
Maybe.
Well, no.
The question is, are they really the Doctors in this world?
And because of what how we were having our chat.
The layers are peeling. They're peeling slowly. Each episode is sinking deeper into these kind of elaborate alternate dimensions that we might think. Nisha had a great, that blew our minds last episode, and theory that both of us have kind of, really attached ourselves to, because now we can't think of anything else but that theory.
And as we spoke about the chaos theory, now you can really see where it's kind of unlayering itself, that this is the nature of how a Doctor actually should be versus...
Where I think it's kind of... I agree with the chaos theory, but I also think that there's an interesting approach that Doctor Who has always done a very interesting approach to alternate dimensions. That it is very much like, if time breaks off from this point and there is an alternate timeline of events if this happens. So all these different basically situations that could break off into multiple events that occur. That is what causes these alternate dimensions. Very much like the Donna Noble episode where that thing's attached to the back. Donna was seeing an alternate reality, and that was a timeline in itself. So I think Doctor Who has had that approach where it's broken off each time something could possibly happen. So I think when, like Nisha said, which Nisha said something right at the beginning of this episode that I have to say that it was Nisha's idea, but I grabbed onto it because I was like, yes, oh my god, yes. Is the part where the Doctor regenerated last season, the season before, and I think that's where the timeline broke. And I think we're seeing another timeline of that the Doctor regenerated a different way instead of this way. And maybe that's why we got a female Doctor this time.
Uh-huh.
And maybe there is an alternate that's going to be different, and maybe that's going to come into play when they're already saying that they're going to bring back multiple Doctors for I think next year's, at the end of next year,
the 55th.
I think so.
Is that the 55th, Mackenzie, that they're looking at doing that, or is that the 60th?
It was the 60th. It was the 60th they were looking at.
I thought it was the 60th. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which
gives us time because we're coming up to the 55th. But
yeah,
I mean,
last I heard was that Chibnall and Jodie both have signed on for season 13 and 14. I don't know if that is exactly true or not, but that's what I've heard. And that at season 14, that's when it would make no
sense for us not to be able to explore the way that we need to.
Yeah,
and we are going to delve into in today's so we really jumped straight in, and I apologize if any of our listeners actually haven't seen the episodes yet, but we're just assuming that you have and that you understand what we're referencing. But I do want to say at one point today we're going to go straight into my concept of who the Doctor was and what the Doctor was experiencing in the first season, and why that is now 100% explained by the Doctor that we just saw in this episode. So that's my theory, and I've been saying it all along that it was a theory of grief, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to discuss it a little bit later as we talk about Chris Chibnall's interview with Radio Times and Anglophenia this week, where he pretty much said yes, that's what we've been seeing, that's what the journey's been. So it's good. It's good to know that they're paying attention to the complex nature of mental health, the grief process, and what it is to understand your mental state and your psychoses when you've gone through such levels of trauma, which we finally had the Doctor physically say in this episode.
Yep.
We got it with the Villa Diodata, and this one, we, in your face, got it. Whew, man, I was like, yes. That's what made me jump up. So, it was those episodes. So, do you want to give us who wants to give us a little outline about this week's episode?
Go ahead, Mackenzie. I've been talking a lot.
Well, I found this episode very bizarre at the beginning, not because of where it was going, but because of the Tide of Rider Wands. Now, those who are not familiar with Rider Wands is set in Iverno, which in this episode it starts with in Ireland. So I'm like, okay. And then we see this baby that is just left in a basket and is adopted by two people. Happens in Rider Wands too. So I'm like, did you guys read my book or something? That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, this is getting weird. And then we discover that this boy, who they call
Brendan.
Bennett,
Brendan.
Brendan, yes, thank you. I'm thinking Benny there. He appears to have the same ability that Jack Harkness has, where he gets shot, falls down a cliff. Somehow the Canberra does a whole entire 360 degrees and ends up on the other way down Broadcliff's cliff, which...
Right. It was Broadchurch's cliff. That's what it was. Thank you.
Which I thought was kind of funny because it was like that same scene that
yes, it was.
I almost wanted, like, where's Jodie coming running through there and being like,
I know.
I'm so expecting that. But of course I knew it wasn't going to happen because it wasn't.
This is where I got my face. The Capaldi era all over again.
Yeah. So totally, I'm like, oh, this is really cool how they threw that little Easter egg in there. And then how he comes back to life. But the thing is that we also see that his father looks eerily like the lone Cyberman. And Ashted is what his name is. And if you take the acronym and you actually switch it, It actually means
anagram.
Something. Yeah, and it means something in a Whovian lore that references to an older time. So it really fits into the Cybermen, and that he is connected to lone Cybermen. So unfortunately, we never learn in this episode how he became the lone Cyberman or why he decided to be the lone Cyberman. We almost had two stories going in at one time. It was being told from the child and the father's perspective, but yet we didn't really get any of the inner thoughts. We didn't really see like a flashback of how those characters were thinking at that time. So it really didn't fit with
or if it's even the Cybermen.
Yeah, because it's a Cyberman, yeah.
We don't know if it's a Cyberman for sure yet.
Right, we don't. But
so it could be many, many different things. But obviously there is hints at the fact that it is a Cyberman. But it's not Hartnell, which I you
mean Harkness? Jack Harkness?
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not Harkness, that's for sure.
It's definitely not, yeah.
I think they kind of... the internet kind of went a bloom about that, and I was like, I don't think so, because he didn't have this regeneration until the Doctor did, so that wasn't it. But there would have been a lot more, and it doesn't look like him at all. So it's like, okay, maybe it's something else.
But then you get to the very end, where the father and the constable have barely aged, and now you have Brendan fully aged as an adult. And now what are they doing to him? Electrocuting him, right? Or technically recharging him or doing something with his memory, because they have to wipe it again so he could presumably start all over again. Tell me about that.
So maybe it's River.
And that was actually a theory as well.
I mean, it fits in with either River or a Time Lord. And it could fit in with the Silence again, doing what the Silence always wanted to do, which was try to kill the Doctor. And what better way to kill the Doctor than create a Cyberman that is River?
Yes.
A Cyberman that's impervious to the rules of Cybermen?
Yes.
Because this is a Cyberman class that's vile, evil, but very, very violent.
They tried it once with the humans, and
emotionally violent, which is very different. Emotionally violent, and Chibnall says that in his interviews. It's an emotionally violent Cyberman. That is such an oxymoron, because that's not what a Cyberman is. There's no emotion, right? But what happens, as in the case of where Missy unleashes the Cybermen in her first episodes, where we first introduced, where she's created a race, a master race of Cybermen, where we have the ability for them to still maintain their emotions. So, it's synchronous to some extent that the master would have knowledge of this type of race of Cybermen, because, well, the master is the one who created this race. Yeah. So in my brain, I'm like, I wonder if it's what happened to that whole race? What happened? They didn't all get destroyed. So I'm also wondering, is that something that we're supposed to be referencing in terms of the master? It would kind of make sense to some extent to draw a line between those, but they don't have to, of course. They don't have to.
Forgetting the character that they brought up a few episodes ago that said that she was a doctor.
Right.
We don't know where that character went or where that character came from.
But we're supposed to find out something. Yes. Not much. I heard it's not much, because I also believe the end of the episode series is also a cliffhanger, correct?
Yes.
It is. Correct.
Yeah, because, and then from what Chibnall says, basically it takes quite a few episodes in the next series to explain where we're at, which is why Jodie had to come back. It's kind of impossible, because it's implausible to tell the story that he's telling without having all the same characters there. Well, I mean, a companion, possibly, but,
I think we're going to have a companion that gets killed in the next episode.
That's what I'm hearing, too. And I'm thinking that, too, because of what happened with Adric. It just, it has a lot of eerie similarities. In the Fourth Doctor's era, we learned that there was a cyber war and that it almost wiped them all out. So when I was watching the episode, I thought, is this the same cyber war that we're dealing with now, even though it's in the future? Have we somehow got thrown into this same cyber war.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was the very first thing. And that was the same cyber war where we learned about Volgar, where the Guardians, and I had talked to Lewis, actually, I couldn't remember who the Guardians were. I'm like, who are the Guardians of?
The black and white Guardians, and how they're the two that keep the, Mm-hmm.
Actually, there's a different set of Guardians. In Volgar, there was a set of people that called themselves the Guardians, and they were from that planet that had the gold that the Cybermen were allergic to.
The golds,
So I believe those are the Guardians, that it wasn't the black and white ones that we're thinking of. It's these actual Guardian people that look, with their uniforms, they look like Gallifreyans. And in fact, there's a symbol that they used to have that was referencing the Volgar.
Yes!
But as the show went on, somehow it got turned to being Gallifreyan instead of being about Volgar. But it's very interesting about that symbol, because there was an image leaked by Mandip that shows that symbol showing up again. So,
and then they quickly took it down.
Yeah.
So I think that's correct. So when we were looking at and we were researching for the show, which unfortunately I knew I was going to be on, that I believe in our research we came up with that black and white Guardian, which was what we were referencing. And I agree with you. I believe that you're exactly going in the right direction on that completely. And I believe what we're talking about now is another cyber war.
Yes.
Exactly that. Because it's referenced in the Genesis of the Daleks. It's referenced in Pandorica. It's referenced in the Time War.
Because it wasn't one of the Guardians, the like fossils that they found at the Pandorica, one of the Cybermen and he goes, oh yeah, that's one that survived the war.
That's correct. That's right. That's what I was exactly referencing right here. And just remember something, because you know how we were talking in the beginning about how. Okay, so we're going to go back, and we haven't explained the chaos theory, and that's okay. But it's the only reason we need to. We're talking about it is it's about intersectionality and interconnectedness of overlapping loops of time and dimension. It's actually the entire theory, if you think about it, behind how the TARDIS operates and makes its decisions. And it's about this. See how my hands are going? The thing about the chaos loop is it creates loops that are like this. But at some point in life, they do this. And then they do this again. And it's whether or not in this moment they actually will connect, or will they keep bypassing each other. When the premise behind the Pandorica is all of the villainous beings in all across as many of those intersections as possible, which is, by the way, why they had to create a crack in the wall, because it was the only way to be able to do what? Create this thing.
Yeah.
At the chaos intersection.
Yeah.
Right? That they all came together across all of that, including having just come from the cyber war. Okay? To destroy that doctor at that given point in time. Otherwise, all of time and space in the future would be destroyed. And it would be inevitable. The inevitable end. So, my mind was blown because I kept thinking, Pandorica, I get this. I wonder if he even realized that this was going to, like that he was like opening a door for us to be able to come back. And
Pandora's box, would you say?
Huh? Pandora's box, did you say? Yes. That's exactly what it was. Because then when you look at the episodes later where we are overlapping time, the dinosaurs in the future, et cetera, etc., aren't we then validating the theory we're talking about right now?
Yeah. 100%. So we have precedents for it already in Doctor Who, and I think that we're leading into that already, because we've already realized that there is something going on with time and kind of those connectivities. At the very end of the episode, we had that portal that connects to an alternate reality. So that in itself, and he said that this is the only spot that could connect to this one thing. And it's exactly like Nisha said, it's that vulnerable spot, that soft spot in the universe where there's a break in time and space where they could cross over. And I think they're going to really go into that in the next one. And I'm so excited.
I believe that's where the universal coming way back around in a full circle. That's where Brendan is. Right? Don't you think so?
Yes.
I actually have a different theory.
Go ahead. Let me hear.
I believe that the guy that in what was his name now that they was on the island, I would say Kasavan. No, that's the Kasavan. Was that? That
something
was
like that.
That was the people. That was the people that looked like the Cybermen. Kind of had that thing that could go between them, but it was something similar to that. Now he was in such said photographs that Mandip accidentally posted and took down. He's showing him in his Gallifreyan suit. So I believe that's Razalon.
Yeah, Kasavan.
Yeah. I believe
that does look like Razalon, actually.
It does, right? Oh my god, yes.
I believe that's Razalon because he says he's been there for so long. What if the baby was actually him? Because if you get this idea, he was in some type of thing like Clark Kent, being thrown into the universe. We don't know where he went. Could he have fallen into an alternate timeline and then regenerated as a baby, and then this is him? And he says he's been there forever. Well, then he's aged and he's become older. His memory gets wiped, so he doesn't remember where he came from. All he remembers is he's been there forever. He's the only one there left. He says everybody's crossed over this alternate timeline, which is Gallifrey, and learns that now, okay, so all these left people are now over in Gallifrey. So I believe this is Razalon. And that would also explain why he reacted like, oh.
Oh, you mean Brandon is Razalon?
Yeah.
And do you think that they just have him in a stasis in a way where they're just mastering his memories and what he's seeing and the life that he's living in?
Exactly.
Do
you feel basically like he's in like a globe?
I do. I feel that, and I feel his father has become the lone Cyberman.
Oh, that's interesting. And then he's the one that's the gatekeeper at the end of the universe.
Yeah, so he's now the gatekeeper. So Brendan is the gatekeeper, aka Razalon, who
that's why
he reacts the way he does when he sees Gallifrey. He's like, "Oh, I've never seen it look like that before." So that would be why there. And
again, at the same time, he's been the person at the portal keeping watch on it to get people through. So he's seen Gallifrey every time people went through it.
Yeah.
Why would he deceive the Doctor other than that he's working with the Master to deceive him?
It could be that, or it could be that maybe the Gallifreys never looked destroyed until this particular moment in time. It's possible there too, because we don't know when 12th Doctor kicked him off of Gallifrey how much time has passed between now and then.
True. But also the last time we saw Gallifrey, it was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's what we're going to see now, is how it got destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
I think this whole event is going to be what leads it to get destroyed.
Yes.
And the Doctor seeing it in the future, technically.
Exactly. And it goes with my theory. My thought was the Master never did it by himself. Either the moment came in or the Cybermen did it. And I'm really leaning towards the Cybermen did it, and then the Master just took credit because he could, because he likes chaos, even if he's in the heart and middle of it.
Yeah. That's why I like the Master so much.
Me too.
It's the ultimate villain. I mean, the Master, like, I love it because it's very much like the Joker-esque feel of it, that he kind of masterminds this whole series of events that lead in. It's very like what do you call it, chess, that he's leading all these different pawns to fall into this one event, and it always comes out the exact way that he wants, even though sometimes there is a wild card that gets pulled out, and it's usually the Doctor playing opposite to what they normally do, and that's what changes the whole thing. But I love it. It's so fun.
Yes.
By the way, the word Ashad, I meant to tell you, means invincible.
Yes.
It's a Sanskrit word or name. So it's kind of interesting because I think he probably chose the name. I don't believe so. I don't believe that it was a given name based on circumstances. Because in this moment, I think that Ashad believes Ashad is invincible. I do think that it bears recollecting that Ashad killed his own children because they failed to follow in his footsteps or to believe in the perfection of the Ascension. So he literally is psychotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's mad. And also, some of the things that I read, people were asking what was he doing to the Cybermen, by the way, in the ship. Did you see the theory or what that was supposed to be?
I didn't see the theory, but what I believed is what he was doing is he was destroying them because they were the leaders of that group. So he was putting them in line, saying, "I'm the one. I'm the cyber leader. You're going to obey me. You guys have now been dethroned." So that's what I was saying.
Yes, it's actually that's what it says, and that he was uploading a virus, and the virus that he was uploading, basically brainwashes them to follow him.
Yeah.
To believe that his philosophy of what Cybermen is and the perfection of being of this race would make sure that they followed him, and that this becomes the master race. So it was.
What if? I don't think there's ever been a time where one of the Cybermen has actually taken a Gallifreyan.
Well, that was one thought I had too. I'm like, well, they've never ever upgraded a Gallifreyan before, except there was a novel / comic book during the Fifth Doctor's era where the Doctor was like, oh yeah, and then they've never been upgraded before. Well, they proved him wrong right there, and they did upgrade a Gallifreyan. I don't remember if it was him particularly that they tried upgrading or if it was somebody, but they were able to show him, yes, a Time Lord can be upgraded into a Cyberman.
So I'm wondering if maybe the lone Cyberman is a Gallifreyan, and we've already noticed that the time that the Cybermen actually tried to take over the Doctor, that the Doctor took back control. So I'm wondering if it's a Gallifreyan that has that anger streak already. We know that history of the Gallifreyan anger that they have. Imagine what happens if you have the cybernetics and all that stuff of a Cyberman inside of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what if that's that?
And I believe that is actually true because because of the fact that he didn't age, that already told me right off that he was a Gallifreyan. And I think that maybe he may have even been possibly come from Omega, and that is where they wiped his memory, because there is this theory that the Doctor's memory had been wiped between Troughton and Pertwee, and that's what Joe Martin's Doctor apparently could be. Well, we don't know for sure, but
that's called the 6B theory, Lewis. And I was discussing it with Mackenzie.
Yeah,
and it's a very convoluted, but very complex theory. But what happened is because of the budget issues, et cetera, when they were going, when they were trying to do the regeneration, they had a break in time. And so with that break in time, for the first time in how many years, they had nothing to give the audience. So a series of comic book writers who had rights to the storyline at the time, because there wasn't the same copywriting, etc., created an entire timeline of what happened to Pertwee between the moment that the Time Lords put him on trial and then the moments where his mind gets wiped.
Yeah.
Really?
Entire theory premises that has something that's where Ruth exists.
Exactly, yeah, and that's exactly where I think this is fitting into that, because that's exactly what they would have to do. They have to wipe out the memory, and they do. And there also was the theory that the Doctor worked for Gallifrey, for someone in Gallifrey, probably the head people, and that would say that's why Joe Martin's Doctor says, I have a job. You have a job? And Jodie's like, you have a job? That's why her doctor reacts like, how do you have a job? That's reason why is you got that going on. And it's also possible that that maybe Ashad somehow was part of the looms. That we might see that coming back into this next episode too, which is it was, for those who are not into the big Gallifrey lore, is that Gallifreyans, unlike humans, cannot reproduce. So what they do is instead they will put a Time Lord into a loom, and they then create their offspring. And so instead of actually producing with somebody else, they just get all hot and bothered and sweaty, and now there is a new Time Lord, and that person, everybody from Gallifrey can, when this new one has come out, they can see what regeneration this particular one is. It's not necessarily when they're born. Are they on their very first generation? They might be on their 5th generation regeneration. They don't know.
Correct, because they're still in the void, right?
Yeah.
So that was pretty mind blowing, actually. Just so you guys know.
I was trying to find the comic book thing online, and I couldn't find it.
I have it, so I'll send it to you because I sent it to Mackenzie. You have it; it's in the chat. I sent it to you. You can go ahead and post it. Yeah, I sent it to you last week. 6B theory. So
yeah.
It's totally worth reading that for fans. And please bear with it because it's not easy reading.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you write it through, because they actually took the time to create an entire outline of what the timeline would really look like and where this doctor in Pertwee's regeneration would fall. So it's pretty fascinating. I'm just saying.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah. We're going to go ahead and take our commercial break. And
because I want to read about 6B.
We're going to come back and we're going to work on a couple more theories. And I posted the name. The old man's name is Koshamar because remember they have to call.
I'm like, I know I don't have it right.
Yeah, I was like, no, I know it's Koshamar. It's so different name. But when we come back from the break, we're going to go into some of the fan theories, but then really we're going to go into the words from Chibnall himself and then Sasha Dewan and why it's really important to listen to what they have to say because it really draws a very strong line between everything we're saying. Because while it's very difficult to follow what we're saying, believe it or not, there is a structure to everything we're throwing out today. And Timey-wimey, what do you want? Excuse me, timey-wimey and wibbly-wobbly. This is the epitome of it. So, all right, my friends, this is Nisham, your geek mom with the Whovian Complex, and we'll be right back after our commercial break.
As the songs of awakening rang through, the world was created. The silence was broken.
Middle-earth, with its rolling hills, broken mountains, flowing rivers, and beautiful forest, was created.
Cellar Door is a journey into the mythology, the mystery, and the beauty of Middle-earth. Sit back,
close your eyes,
and imagine.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Whovian Complex, and we are back for another awesome half of this show. And Mackenzie's going to lead us on with another fascinating story. So go ahead, Mackenzie.
Thank you. So this was really fun. This particular week, we had Doctor Who official Twitter had invited Sasha to be on the Twitter to answer fans' questions. And some of them were very, very fascinating. One of the query questions he was asked right off the bat was how was he inspired by the Master? And he said that what inspired him was fearlessness, that nothing is impossible. And he said for him, it gave him freedom and confidence because he really didn't have it for a long time. So it sounds like he really was seeking clarity there. And so that would be another thing. When you don't have clarity, I can tell you from a personal perspective, if you don't have clarity, things just go wrong. And if you're not an action taker, it goes worse yet. So the other thing that I found was really fascinating is they asked him, when did he find out? Well, it turns out he was at a play with nobody else but Peter Capaldi. And he could not tell Peter that he had just gotten the role of the Master. He had actually also at one point had been offered the part of the Doctor, but he turned it down because he felt that a woman should have the part. So he declined, and later on they came back and said, hey, would you like to be the Master? And he's like, Yeah. So there's a little fun fact there that he could have been the 13th Doctor. He also previously had worked with Jodie, so he absolutely adores her. And he said about this next episode is that you're going to see a new take on both him and the Doctor. This episode is going to be very action-packed, it's emotional, and it was a joy to play, and they really got into it, so I'm really excited about that. He also felt, which just kind of leads into clarity, that playing the first director, those who had not seen the Adventure in Times, that was, he got to play the first director there of Doctor Who. Yeah, so in a way, he felt like he was writing his own history. So that was really fun.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Yeah, he really felt that. And he felt also that when he approached Chris, he actually did not watch a lot of even when he was a fan of the show, he did not watch a lot of the previous performances of Doctor Who, specifically of the Master, because he wanted to have his own take, and he was afraid that the people not necessarily he would start copying other Masters. So he wanted to be very unique in that. So that's where he actually talked to Chibnall about the chaos theory, which is one of the reasons we brought that up for this particular episode. And he kind of said similar thing as what I said earlier, is that he feels that the Master, that chaos for him creates amazing things, even if it's in the heart, in the middle of it.
It is.
Yeah.
It really does, because a lot of the chaos stuff that we have, I mean, that creates drama. Let's be honest. Every good show has bits of chaos theory in it, because that's just humankind. That's what we thrive on. We build our societies on that chaos theory, and that's how we kind of allow ourselves to progress, because we find solutions for the theories that unfold that kind of destroy the previous theories, and we use that as a springboard to kind of fix our society and mold ourselves into who we should be, very much like we did. Perfect example is the what do you call it, social rights movement, the equal rights movement, both of what do you call it, the suffrage and the civil rights. That was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of problems. There was a lot of things, uncertainties, and a lot of things that were left up in the air. But then in the end, we grew as a society because of it. So, I mean, our springboards, that's what we are. And there's not a Doctor without the Master.
That's exactly correct. Yeah. So, jumping into that, there's two things that we talked about, and it's the Master Doctor dynamic, and it's a dynamo, and physically a dynamo that was created by the Gallifreyan, the unstable minds of the Gallifreyan council, that to be able to constantly have fixed points in time that they could attach to be able to always find their way back. That they would use and abuse the minds and the souls of these two beings. And I know that we were only shown in the Timeless Child, etc., that it was the Master, but I don't believe that whatsoever. Because they're indelibly attached and connected to each other. There is no Master without the Doctor, or Doctor without the Master, because they were raised together. And from what we understand, that's not necessarily how things happened. They were raised together. They were brought together. They came to the void together. They had the experiences together. They saw death together for the first time. They experienced grief and loss together for the first time. And then it gets shattered. I believe that, we know that Gallifreyans have very strong inferential memory. And so when they experience something, it stays very indelible to who they are. So if you have the Master and the Doctor having the most memories, indelible, inferential memories together, then is it possible for them to be torn apart or again, not to be drawn back together again?
Yeah, they're always going to draw back to each other. And that is 100% the chaos theory, is that their chaos and order help each other and kind of attach themselves to each other. And it's the yin and yang. I mean, that's the simplification of the chaos theory in a metaphysical aspect. It's yin and yang. There's always one part that's touching the other, and that always will be the Master and the Doctor. Now, you brought up an interesting point, Nisha. With that same aspect, the Timeless Child, we know that it's not going to be the Master at this point. So I'm wondering if it's Razalon, according to our theory that Mackenzie was putting down. Because that would be the person that brings the end of Gallifrey and brings the destruction of Gallifrey, because he is the gatekeeper.
Because he wants to do what? What did Razalon want to do? He believed that the Gallifreyan,
the greatest race,
had already transcended physical body, so they were about to transcend, and they were about to ascend. Remember, ascend into what? Into non-corporeal beings, into pure sentience. So, yes, is it possible that this is what we're seeing? Yeah.
And could it be the Guardians, the forming of the Guardians? Maybe Gallifreyans are the original Guardians.
Oh, I think that's actually a very plausible theory.
Yeah, it's definitely, I would think that is plausible, because the uniforms from Bulgar looks very eerily similar. They have two different, there's like two different types of people there, and they wear, the only difference is that their faces are almost like, it kind
distorted.
Of like, yeah, distorted.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, very, and almost like reptilic a little bit too.
Yeah. So maybe it is like that. Maybe it is after that battle that all their forms actually go up and become the Guardians, or maybe that's where all these people that crossed over, instead of crossing over to Gallifrey, they crossed over into a different level of a different plane of existence, and by doing that, they became the Guardians.
Yeah, and
so maybe that's why this guy is the first time he's ever seen what do you call it, Gallifrey, is because that's the first time he's seen it. All these others crossed over and became the Guardians,
which is very possible, because we do still have Bulgar still out there. At least to more knowledge that the Cybermen had tried to destroy it and they failed, so that planet's still floating out there, at least that we know of, unless it got destroyed in the Time War.
So that leads us into that conversation with Moffat, where he had the interview this week, where he was asked, to explain the ability this master, and to say, how does this master fall into the timeline? And Moffat said, you can't do that. This is Doctor Who. At no point in the entirety of Doctor Who are we promised lineality. Yeah. There are no absolutes.
It's the whole basis of the show. There is no lineality.
So if we don't leave open plot lines or gaps, we're actually doing a disservice to the whole point of the Doctor Who and the timey-wimey and the TARDIS. So he says, he has his theories, but the whole point is he believes this storyline is written because the fans are the ones who have to fill in the gaps, which is what we're doing right now. So by us filling in the gaps, we create the actual storyline. And then it becomes plausible because we're able to theoretically pull in the things and the pieces of the puzzles over 50 years. And I so agree with him. And he actually loves 100%. The concept.
Yeah.
He loves the concept, and he does not feel that this master takes away from Missy whatsoever.
I don't think it does. It allows us to put him wherever we want. Which, if they leave it open, I will be happy with that. Because if they don't explain where he came from, I'll be happy with that. Because then we could actually say, oh, it's between this and this because of the hints that are given here. And I mean, that's the whole basis of it. It's very much like what Nisha just said. I mean, if they didn't allow all these open-ended moments, then we wouldn't have how many hours of Big Finish productions for Paul McCann's Doctor. I mean, come on. How many hours of glorious adventures? Because those audio Big Finishes is what started the Big Finish, really. Let's be honest. That's what pushed them into the mainstream and made them be able to add so many hours to the fandom. I mean, how many countless hours do we have now of this? And it's all because of that.
Theory. It's fan theory.
Exactly.
And isn't that what we do? And one of the things that he said also in that interview, which I found very refreshing, is while he wrote that Sim's doctor used the device that made it impossible for Missy to regenerate,
Yeah.
We have no idea that he created a Missy who had the ability to undo that.
Exactly.
So, hasn't it been that way from the beginning of time, that the Doctor and the Master has always had the ability to do this? I think that was very refreshing. I love the idea that it gave us back the license that we needed to say, yo, take a chill pill, people. This is a fan-based thing, and we are allowed to create our own fan theories, and they don't need to tell us everything. It's
and
cool.
Maybe they already explained it, and they didn't even realize it. It could be Rassilon jumped back and took the Master to create this whole situation that happened, and told him to erase his memory and put him on Earth because he might encounter the Doctor at some point. So maybe this is all set up for that, and maybe Rassilon, with the same exact equipment used to erase their memory, uses it to erase the Master's memory, and all of that stuff that happened with Missy is gone, if that's the case. So it sets up the precedent for it.
Gone. The memory of Missy would be gone. I agree that, and that's exactly what didn't I say that from the beginning?
Yeah.
That I believe that this Master has no intentional knowledge of Missy.
Yeah, 100%.
Therefore, the only
100%.
way for that this Doctor to be plausibly who this Doctor is either to have been before or one who's not from this timeline. Wasn't that literally the first thing I said to you guys?
This season, yep, that was the first thing you said.
And here we're getting that concept that this is actually possible. So this is great. This has been such a good show because we needed to get to this place. We needed for us to be able to get these pieces out. What I wanted to, and I really apologize to the followers and the listeners. I'm so sorry for this stupid cold I have. Usually I can keep it in check. It's not being good for me today. So, I wanted to really, really quickly, I wanted to tell you with the chaos theory, there of course it's open-ended, all the various loops, etc., and we know that the TARDIS is literally the vehicle that they created to take you along all of the crazy mad variations of the loop, and why the Doctor actually never knows where the Doctor's being taken. The only sentient being who knows is the TARDIS. Mm-hmm. And have you not noticed that the TARDIS has been more absent?
Yes.
With this Doctor, and was actually completely absent when they got to Koshamar.
Yeah.
Gone, not there whatsoever. We're on a Cyberman, 2 Cybermen, vehicles. Seriously cool concept. Why are they doing it? So I'm really, really curious to see if it's because of the time loops and because of the theory of the intersectionality. But
speaking of that, I wanted to throw a little thing that you just reminded me of. This was a fan theory that I heard a few years ago, and it really caught my attention because I was like, ooh, that's interesting. You know how we see the time vortex, that it is like this swirling thing in the middle? What they're explaining is that those are actually all the different realities. And each line that you see is an alternate reality, and that's why it creates this vortex, because all those realities are possible, and the TARDIS goes off into whichever one the TARDIS chooses. And I was like, oh my god, that is so cool. That theory just blew my mind, and I was like, oh my god, that is awesome. It just tied in with what you were saying, Nisha, and I had to say it.
Yeah.
Actually, it completely times in what David Tennant tells us. I very, very clearly, because I think it's Donna, perhaps? I'm trying to remember. Yes, I think it's Donna. Guys, let me throw this in there. Do please remember, as you pointed out, Lewis, don't forget, fans, do please remember the theory of alternate timelines. Mm-hmm. Dr. Donna, do not forget, they clearly told us that timelines could be manipulated and that there are beings out there who are watching the entire scenario unfold and that they're going to help, they're manipulating it. If you remember that clearly, right, guys?
It's the Doctor Who version of the Q.
I want people to remember that because, again, plausible theory.
Yes.
Tennant says that, I think it's Tennant, I could be wrong, but I think it's Tennant. When the TARDIS does the bumps in the vortex loop, that everything has to fall in place for the TARDIS to know where it's supposed to exit. That even with the Doctor setting parameters for the exit, that it's not possible to always predict that that's exactly where you're exiting. And it's really well explained in the Capaldi era.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because how many times did Capaldi try and was completely pulled, boom, back out into a place that doesn't make sense? Well, guess where we've been seeing that? For the entirety of the 13th Doctor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the TARDIS hasn't been present at all. It hasn't been doing squat. Every time we see the TARDIS is angry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's on red alert every single time that we see the TARDIS. So that's never happened in Doctor Who. So there has to be a reason for that. And I think that goes back to what Nisha's theory is that this is a messed up timeline. And we're seeing something that shouldn't be happening.
And the TARDIS that keeps disappearing is possibly going back to the original timeline. Or, well, we don't know what the original timeline is, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So,
Or confused.
Very
confused. So while we're making our way down to the end of the episode, so what we wanted to also bring back to the end, unless anyone else has anything they want to talk about right now, there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
But first of all, there's some comments out there that says that they had already pre-written the entirety of this series finale before they even revealed that Jodie was coming on as the Doctor. So there's some concept that this, and based on what Chibnall says in this interview, I am actually believing that. So,
and I'm wondering if Chibnall had a hand in writing this as well, because, or at least kind of mapping it out, because there was setup for this in the Capaldi era, and there's a lot that kind of set the tone, I think, for what's going on now, especially like setting up Gallifrey the way they did, setting up Rassilon if that's what it ends up being. I mean, there was set up for it. So I wonder if what do you call it, Chibnall and Moffat sat down and actually discussed these possibilities ahead of time.
I believe that's very possible. The interview is really revealing, and because he emotes, so you know my concept that grief has been the underlying thematic through the entirety of the two series so far, and that the reason we had such a glib, lighthearted, manic Doctor in the very first series, who was extremely reckless and impulsive, was because this is a Doctor who had just faced some extreme loss and was living through guilt because of the loss of Bill, and that I felt that that's what this Doctor was bringing into this new regeneration. And because if you think about the episode where we have the Doctor about to regenerate, and he's facing himself as the first Doctor, and they're having that candid conversation about, look at what you've created, look at who you've become, look at the mess that you've left of the world in your wake, and look at the anger that you exist in. Is that who I wanted to be? I'm not pleased, you know, because remember that conversation to me is one of the most telling. And now we have a Doctor who was already at odds with himself because of loss and grief. And we come to find out, based on Chibnall's article, that the loss of Adric, as you said, has stayed with the Doctor the entire time.
Yep.
That it has stayed as a very strong sense of grief. And then you have the loss of many, many, many more, but then you have Clara. So Capaldi loses Clara in a way that is so cruel, and in a way that no matter how petulant, how angry, and how much he holds the Gallifreyan counsel and to he holds them ransom basically to save her. He can't technically save her, right? Mm-hmm. So he has to wipe his own memory in order to be able to overcome that grief, right? To be able to move past that grief. Then you turn around and he ends up with a new companion, and then that companion, through pure 1000% recklessness, as he is trying to befriend and restore the monster to being a civil being, that he neglects Bill, and Bill is killed in this fashion, and that the doctor has absolutely no way to fix it. So then there's, of course, regret, there's guilt, there's a withdrawal of any, I guess, emotional movement or progress that had been made. So all of these guilts come back, and so when you regenerate, all of those guilts get overpinned by this doctor who is now, because what do you do in the stages of grief? You can either you can fester in it and sit in it, and you sit in a pure state of disconnection, or you go into a place where you're happy-go-lucky and you're laughing and you play it off and say that I'm good, I'm great, I understand it, I've gotten through it, I know, I've dealt with the grief and it's good, it's behind me. That's the doctor I feel like we saw in the first season.
We've had that since the beginning of the modern Who era. I mean, the Doctor in the Clouds, when he goes back to the Victorian era and just sticks himself in the clouds, and he's like, okay, nope, I'm going to shut myself away from everybody and anybody, and that's what you get at the beginning. Yeah,
correct. Yeah,
and it's like, I mean, the Doctor's always gone through that, and I think this is an important lesson because it shows that you cannot overcome your grief by forgetting about it, by
closing the door on it.
Exactly, and not learning from it and healing from it naturally without doing. It's another form of self-harming, honestly. Mm-hmm. You are internalizing that same thing and trying to forget about it when you shouldn't. You have to accept that. What
happens to the environment that you're leaving behind you, to the wake of your angst, to the wake of your recklessness? What happens to the harm you're causing to the people around you? And that's what we're seeing.
And it always comes back. Mm-hmm. Because guess what? Until you accept it and learn to deal with it, it will keep coming back. Because that's just showing that you're not able to handle certain things. And it's going to keep coming back because subconsciously it's there. Whether you push it back and you push it as far back as you want, those skeletons are going to come out no matter which way you look at it. And no matter how far back you throw it in your subconscious, it's going to come out. And I think that's what we're seeing with this doctor.
And he's so
on point with that.
We're 100% about, and I'll let you close out, Mackenzie. I'm going to read the statement by Chibnall wrote in the article, and I know we need to wrap up. So I know we would try. I'm so sorry, Lewis. I know this is such a hard episode not to keep going because there's so much to talk about. So in the BBC America interview, the question was, how does the 13th Doctor feel about the Cybermen? And Chibnall says, I always feel that the Doctor and the Cybermen, and this is what I've brought to this story, and Jodie Whittaker's doctor's reaction to meeting them, is that there's quite a lot of baggage there. The Doctor has experienced casualties at the hands of the Cybermen. Bill Potts was turned into a Cyberman. Also as a kid who was 12 in 1982, when the character of Adric died at the hands of the Cybermen under Peter Davison's Doctor. I'm not sure I've ever fully recovered from the trauma of that, and I'm not sure the Doctor has either. So I think she's worried, and she realizes as the story goes on how much risk and danger she's put her friends into, and she's brought them into harm's way. You always feel with these returning monsters, you always want to dig into the Doctor's emotional relationship. They're not just arch enemies that don't feel anything about one another. This Doctor feels things deeply. So just like her relationship with Sacha Dhawan's monster is complex, so is her relationship with the Cybermen. She knows that they're capable of what they're capable of. She's seen it. She's felt it. I wanted to bring that out. It's personal. So, this was it. Everything I've been saying for 2 years. I felt like, whoa, that he really paid credence to the journey of grief and loss and depression and disconnection and self-harm, and what we do to ourselves when we're not able to fully deal with grief. And you're thinking about this. This is all the way back to the Fifth Doctor, and we all caught it. Even, and then to have him say, yes, you're correct. This is what we were seeing. So, yeah, it was very emotional for me because, we've all of us here have lived the journey of grief and what that's done in our own personal lives, right? And how it's changed us as human beings. And 100%. I think 100% the reason why the three of us are doing this show. Because it's a story we needed to tell through our own personal experiences with grief and loss. And I want people to understand that's why the Whovian complex is called what it is, and why we made the decision to make the name what it was, to understand the complexity that Chibnall is talking about in this article. So, reach out to people if you're dealing with grief and loss. Talk to people, talk to us, ask questions. Don't
internalize.
Yeah, don't internalize. Don't feel pressured, right?
Don't internalize. All it is you're gonna be holding down something that you need to face. You can't hold things down. You can't put it in a cage or anything like that. Like the doctor did the master. You have to face it. You have to allow yourself to talk, get past that situation, and learn to accept that there is that person inside of you as well.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%. In fact, this whole entire conversation right now goes exactly what I am currently coaching about at MackenzieFloor.com. So what I'm doing right now is talking about clarity. And clarity is one of the very important things. If you don't have clarity, you really don't know what is going on in your life. All of us are going through the hero's journey, where it starts with a call to action. And what happens is when you start, it's kind of like looking at it as a circle. You start moving down and you're going towards, once you are going to go next, will be going, you pass that threshold. Once you pass that threshold, that is when you're going to start learning about yourself, pulling up those old pains and exploring them. But some people don't get that far. They get about halfway down the line and they reject that call of action and they fall right back to where they start. So if you're one of those people that you feel like you're caught in a circle and you're just living the same thing, it might not be the same situation, but it's similar in an eerie way, and you've been going through that over and over and over like an unending, never-ending story. I've been there. I was in that circle for almost 20 years, and it was this past year that I finally broke. And so now I am teaching other people how you can get through it too. You're not alone.
Absolutely. We're very much dedicated to that. That's the mission of all three of our organizations and why we're working together to be able to bring this message to everyone. And as a mental health advocate, I want you to understand that there is no timeline to passing through the phases of grief, and there are no amount of times that you can. So no expectations, no pressures on yourself, and understand that. Definitely reach out, to mental health counselors to talk to them about the grief process. Look up on the SAMHSA, SAMHSA websites to get some idea about what grief and loss cycles are like.
And reach out.
Reach out,
because honestly, there is no age restriction, like Nisha said. There's no gender restriction either. Anybody and everybody faces grief, and everybody goes through it at one point in their life or not. And unfortunately, some situations, it takes a lot to get past, and a lot to get through, not past, sorry. And that's why you need to speak with somebody. Speak with somebody that actually knows what they're talking about, somebody that could help you acknowledge the grief and not just live with the grief, but be able to grow from it.
Mm-hmm.
And very much like a plant does, that grows on any plant, it needs to attach itself, and you have to be able to grow with that parasite plant that's inside of your body, because it is a parasite, and it'll keep feeding off of you and draining you unless you learn to live with it. And that's what we all have to learn how to do, and that is very hard because it's against everything that our social norms have taught us, especially if we were born before like the 90s or before.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't allowed to grieve ever.
Mm-hmm.
We were told to internalize, and our society has changed now, and we accept that.
Now we have an unhealthy Gen X and baby boomer generation because of the effects of that, and that's what we're seeing manifest very physically in the Doctor Who world universe, and we're seeing manifest. That's the beauty of fandom. Because it gives us something to be able to connect to, that helps us to be able to understand who we are, and to be able to reflect and analyze, and then reinvent and re-understand. So, man, that's who we are at the Whovian Complex. That's who we are at Diversely Geek. It's what we do. It's what we're committed to. It's what MackenzieFloor.com is committed to. It's what Man Bites Media is committed to be able to bring what we love so passionately to the people who are at risk, and this is their medium for healing. So thank you so much for being here. We did warn you it was going to be a very deep conversation today.
Yes.
I really want to thank both of you for being so open and understanding where we were going to go with the conversation, and that how important the message was going to be today.
100%.
So, you guys want to remind us where you're going to be at, what's coming up for you in terms of social media, etc. Mackenzie?
Well, right now I am offering at MackenzieFloor.com. I am offering right now a 3 free day mini course on the Rite of Wands, which deals with clarity. So it's completely free. So there's no obligation to have to buy anything or anything like that. And it's a way to kind of get a little more of what we've been talking about from the mental health perspective and wellness perspective. And since then, the next place that I'll be at will be in March. It'll be at the end of March, and I will be doing at Leon and Lulu, I believe is what it's called. That is a bookstore that's in Clarkson.
Nice.
And then you'll be in New York after that, won't you?
Yeah, I'll be in New York after that, though that part is still kind of up in the air, except that I know I'm going to see Long. So I know I'm going to see that, and I'm in front row thinking, you.
I'm persistent. These two will tell you.
That she is.
You never know. Miracles can happen when you're around me, huh? Oh. And then Lewis?
Yes, if you want to check out any of our other podcasts that we actually run, Man Bites Film, as you can see above, you could check that out on manbitesfilm.com. And of course, we also are returning with Man Bites Retro, which my beautiful fiance and I run that podcast, and it's basically an in-depth look on films from all eras and going from filmmaker aspects and just really grabbing onto the meat and potatoes of those films and really talking about them, going deep into each of the characters. And then Nisha and I are bringing back Cellar Door for season 2 now, and we are actually dropping that this week. The first episode of that season is dropping, so please, if you love audio dramas and you love fantasy audio dramas, we put a lot of work into each of these episodes. That's why they're only 10 minutes long, because it is an experience. It is an emotional experience, and it is an audio experience that will make you feel the emotions of the characters, that will make you feel the emotions that we're describing. Through our words and through our sounds.
And it's an ASMR experience. We 100% make sure that it's a sensory experience that for people who have different sensory learning modalities, that you can connect to the show from different perspectives of of learning auditory, sensory, etc. So there's a lot that we put into.
Yeah, and it's one of those that if you want to really truly experience it, put on the headphones, play it in your car. Mm-hmm. Without anything else. That's why it's only 10 minutes long, because we want you to be able to experience all the sounds that are involved in the soundscape that we create for it.
Yeah.
Because it really immerses you into it further. So please check out the first season so you could catch up to the second season that we're going to be dropping every other week.
Yay! Absolutely. And we're heading to MegaCon, which we'll talk about with our next episode, give you a lot more insight into. We're going to be bringing Celador to MegaCon.
Yay!
So that's going to be really interesting. What we're doing there is going to be pretty fantastic. I'm excited about it. So we will definitely catch you guys up with the next episode to let you know how to find us and how to participate in what we're going to be doing there, which is part of our Celador experience. So, nervousness. And I'll be bringing Diversity Geek will be bringing our workshops officially to the convention scene again for this year from MegaCon moving forward. We have been accepted, so I can't wait to bring that to you, and then hopefully should be able to be putting out a schedule soon to self-care for embracing your and embracing your inner geek series on our websites, hopefully coming up soon. So yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, my darlings. So much. And then Mackenzie and I have our project coming up, which we're working on from this week as well, which is going to be pretty phenomenal. So, all right, darlings, much love to everyone out there. We're here to support you, and we believe in you. And jazz hands, my darlings, because this means there's endless possibilities and all of time and space for you to experience it.
And open arms for anybody.
Open arms, open arms, open arms.